what you're about to learn from John will absolutely change your life. You can do, be, have anything that you want very much in your life with the one principle that we're going to talk about here. It's not positive thinking. It's not law of attraction. It's not I'm okay, you're okay. It's none of the cliches that normally get batted around in personal development conversations. It is, however, what I consider to be one of the holy grail secrets to actually creating a life on purpose and actually living day to day in a life that most people can only imagine. So that may sound like I have given a very, very lofty introduction. Truthfully, I probably haven't scratched the surface. This content tonight has my highest recommendation. Uh, I hope it impacts you as much as it has impacted me. It's been worth a few $1,000,000 to me since I learned it from my co-host. So, John, with no further ado, brother, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for being here, for being here, and all you do behind the scenes. But more importantly, thank you for being willing to discuss this on an open public call instead of just reserving it for our team members, because I think there's a lot of value here that'll really hit home with a lot of people. So thanks for being here tonight, man.
Tony, thank you, man. I almost feel like I got to say something really profound now with that with that lead in, man. It's like, and you know what's interesting? Let me say this too, before we get going, and I go off on some rant. I'm always interested to hear what I'm going to say because I don't plan any of this stuff. I just, I hear it when it comes out of my mouth, and it's for my benefit too. But the point I want to make is we've known each other for a decade. You just referred to an international teleconference that I ran for about 8 years, where thousands and thousands of people around the world attended. And oh, holy shit, you got to hear this crazy Italian dude from New Jersey, and he goes on these rants, and people got impact. But here's the thing the point I want to make. I don't even know what that impact is. A lot of times, I mean, I'm just being the messenger to the best of my ability. Hey, I'm on the path too. None of us have arrived. If you have, let me know, right? You could type it in the chat roll. Hey, I've arrived. I'm levitating, and I'm manifesting fish and loaves. I'm not, okay? I'm not. I'm still working on this guy, John, that you're looking at here. And yes, I've had above average results, as Tony has had above average results. We've both earned millions of dollars in an industry where not many people have that kind of a result, okay? And I want to be very, like Tony said, very open tonight. This is a topic that people could consider this a little bit abrasive, kind of black belt, okay? This isn't for the weak. This isn't for people that want to plod along and, like Tony said, I'm okay, you're okay. He knows that one of the chapters in my first book is titled It's Not Okay, right? Because I've been around self-help and personal growth for so long that I just got sick and tired of, people trying to get on a bestseller list and achieving bestseller lists just by putting out the same mindless drivel just to make people feel like it's okay and not actually do anything. Okay, the title of my first book is Integrity is Everything, which means you actually got to do something with these ideas. Tony's one of those people that actually did. So, Tony, once again, I didn't realize when whatever was coming out of my mouth 10 years ago, whenever you heard it, would have such an impact. And if I could play some little part in your evolution and in the evolution of everybody, maybe you're just meeting me for the first time tonight. Maybe you don't even know who Tony Rush is. Fine. If we can offer you some seed that maybe blooms and blossoms tonight, this week, this year, hopefully before you're 6 feet under, right? Then we'll have done some service. And that's all we want to do here. If you're looking for a way to monetize and as Tony mentioned, if you don't already have a business yet, if you're with us on the team and you're already in, that's great. If not, and you want to participate and put some of these ideas to use, like in real time, right, and actually do it, then we've got a yellow button you can click on down below, and you get lots of benefits for doing that as well. But Tony, thanks again. I know a lot of people, I was watching the chat roll before we started. By the way, I don't watch the chat roll while I talk. It's just you and me talking right now. You and me, meaning the camera lens, which is all of you. So any comments you have, Tony, I guess we'll field the comments. But I was noticing in the chat roll, people were talking about the cows and rhinos story, because Tony, we had a conference call this morning with just 100 or so of our close members, and he mentioned that there's this cows and rhinos story. So I know people are anticipating that. So I've prepared for that. I haven't told the story in a while. Because I feel like, well, you know what, this is an old story. Probably everybody in the world has heard it, but you know what, that's not realistic because I did see, I can't remember the gentleman's name, was like, what's the cows and rhinos story? So I want to start with that and just kind of set the stage just so we can get that cat out of the bag, and then we can go deeper into the philosophy behind this. Okay, and this story comes from a friend of mine, Scott Alexander, who was a big trainer and leader in the network marketing world back in 1980, early 80s. He wrote a series of books based on an idea which he called Rhinoceros Success. I've got an original copy of Rhinoceros Success right here. Like the price on it is $5.95. This is before they had barcodes, apparently, for ISBN numbers. Scott Alexander, and he likened successful people in that industry and in a variety of all kinds of different industries. Tony mentioned the music business. Okay, that's not an easy business either. He likened that successful people in business as entrepreneurs are like rhinos. And there's other kinds of people that are like different kinds of animals. And some of them he equated to like cows. He used cows as a metaphor. You can see here on the cover of the book, there's a rhino driving a Rolls Royce, and then there's some cows on the side of the road chewing their cud. This is the original book, Rhinoceros Success. Anyway, the story evolved over the years. A lot of people have told it. And the version that I told, just based on my experience, went something like this. Okay, so I'm going to give it to you just off the top of my head and see what you'll do with this in whatever you're doing now, whether you're working a home business, network marketing, online sales, whatever you're doing, trying to make it in the music business. Consider this. And then we're going to get into some points about why this rings true for me. So imagine that you've got this cow pasture. You've got this big land of grass that's growing, and there's all these cows that are on the pasture eating the grass and chewing their cud and crapping all over the place. And in the middle of this herd of cows, you've got a rhino standing there who's completely out of place, or it doesn't belong really. It doesn't seem to belong on this cow pasture. And he looks around and he realizes that he's surrounded by cows, he or she. Okay, this isn't a men or women thing, it's either one. And our rhino friend looks around and notices off in the distance that there's this beautiful place. It looks very nice. It's the promised land. Okay, the promised land. And looks around at the other cows and thinks, you know what, I'd like to go to the promised land. I mean, all this grass it's the same thing every day. Here's a bunch of cows standing around basically waiting for the slaughter. I want to go to the promised land. And of course, the cows, which are thin-skinned animals, okay, they're not tough 1 or 2 inch thick skin with big horns on their head. They're not like the rhino. They all say, well, why don't you just be satisfied with what you have? Just be a cow like us. I mean, after all, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. I mean, after all, the farmer gives us we got the grass, we got the hay here. Nothing really happens. Just be comfortable with what you got. But you see, the rhino is thick-skinned and is willing to leave the pasture to go to the promised land, despite the fact that between the pasture and the promised land, there is this vicious jungle. And I mean, there's thorns growing and spikes, and there's hunters out there shooting arrows. There's other kinds of animals, lions, tigers, bears, right? All that kind of stuff. You've got an ugly situation that these cows are not willing to confront. So after a while, here's what happens. Against the good opinion of the cows, and some of these are elder cows of the cow herd, okay, they're the learned cows, against the good opinion of the learned cows and all the agreement that happens around that community, our rhino friend leaves the cow pasture and ventures into the jungle. Of course, the cows think that this rhino's a fool, right? Why not just be satisfied? So our rhino friend goes through the jungle, and of course meets the trials, the tribulations, the adversity of what it takes to get to the promised land. Meets other rhinos on the way that say, hey, look, welcome to the jungle, right? Not the Guns N' Roses song, but you get what I mean. Welcome to the jungle. Around that corner, there's some hunters, right, shooting arrows, and there's bullets flying everywhere else. So, you can be a smart rhino. You don't have to walk into trouble. And so our rhino friend learns the path through the jungle and ultimately ends up at the promised land. And it's great. There's a big mud hole. the rhino jumps in, has the cappuccino, gets all muddy, does what rhinos like to do, right? Rhinos like to charge through jungles, and they like to drink cappuccino at the mud hole. And as time goes on, as our rhino friend gets more acclimated to life at the promised land and seeing one after one, another rhino seems to emerge out of the jungle, new rhinos that they had never met before. After a while, our rhino friend starts to think, where are all these rhinos coming from? I mean, one after another, one comes out, they come out of the jungle, they enter the promised land, I get to meet new friends. These are powerful rhino creatures just like me. And the rhino thinks back to, what was it all that time ago that was on the other side of the jungle? Let me see if I can remember. And in a moment of clarity, our rhino friend realizes it was the cow pasture. That in fact, all these rhinos, one by one, we're not talking about a herd all at once, we're talking about one by one. These rhinos emerge from the jungle. They're coming from the other side. All those cows were really rhinos. They were just conned so thoroughly into cow herd mentality that they looked, acted, and smelled like cows to the extent that most of them could never be convinced otherwise. And that, my friends, is what Scott Alexander was talking about when he wrote this book, Rhinoceros Success. And once again, the story's gone through evolution. Lots of people have different interpretations of it. But the point is that you've got different personalities, different character traits or strengths of character, thick skin and horn, charge, right? Or thin skin and, be meek and just accept what you got, right? The old saying, the meek will inherit the earth. Well, they're not going to inherit the earth if they're making minimum payments on their credit cards, okay? And our rhino, the character of the rhino is dissatisfied with cow pasture kind of living and concession, okay? It's a life of concession. Now, the point that we're going to make here, and I wrote this almost jokingly underneath my name, but not jokingly really, John Lavenia, unreasonable person. The point that we're making here is that rhino-type personalities are unreasonable people. They're not inclined toward concession. They're not inclined toward agreement. Or let me say this, they've become, to a large degree, independent of the good opinion of others. And when we think about it, the purpose of the herd, like in the cow herd, the purpose of the herd is to keep you in the herd. They worship agreement. That is like the highest thing in the world. And we can quote all different kinds of books, good books, okay, not just your standard drivel that's on the bestseller self-help list, but like good books, most of them written a long time ago, where it talks about not conforming to what most people are doing. In fact, right out of the Bible, I can't remember which book or chapter it is, but it says, be not conformed to this world. Okay, that's a manual for success. That's what that is. That's a success manual. When you look at it and you see how you can actually, like I said before, how you can actually apply these ideas into your life, into the doingness of the things that you do. Okay, that's where this stuff comes alive. My truth is worthless to you. Your truth is what matters. Okay, the only way you find those answers is through action. So the point, once again, is to be unreasonable. In other words, to not just rely on reason. Think about it like this. We've got a variety of mental faculties. Okay, one of them is reason. We can reason that 1 + 1 = 2, right? We can reason that if a car is moving at 50 miles an hour, and if a human body was to walk out in front of that car, that the body would be destroyed. The car wins every time, right? So we don't do that sort of thing. So reason is very useful, right? Reason is useful to help us survive in our environment. We've got to survive, right? We can't do much work or accomplish many purposes if we don't have a body, right? If we're falling off of cliffs because we can't reason that, gravity, that's how that works, right? So reason is very useful, but we've got other mental faculties, right? Like, for example, imagination, which is not limited like reason is. Okay, reason is a limited faculty. Imagination is not limited like that. Intuition, which is something you can also develop, right? We've got a memory, and a lot of people rely on their memory, use it to reason their way out of doing things that could progress them through the jungle to the promised land. Okay, we're not talking about being comfortable, and that's exactly what I mean by being unreasonable. Now, Tony talked about this briefly this morning with just a small group of us. Tony, you mentioned a quote by one of my favorite authors and playwrights, George Bernard Shaw, from the United Kingdom. Would you go ahead? I know the quote, but I want you to just put an exclamation point on this opening chapter of our talk tonight. Give us what Shaw said.
George Bernard Shaw was amazing guy. I was actually looking. I found a great print of him that I think I'm going to buy and put in my office, just because he has such amazing quotes. The one that I think is relevant and what you're talking about here, brilliant. But again, I didn't know this quote until after I heard you teach about it. His quote was, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." Mind-blowing. First time I ever heard it.
Yeah, that's really, really good stuff, right? You think about it, the cows on the pasture, no progress. I mean, there is no evolution whatsoever in relying purely on reason and memory to decide what happens next, what happens tomorrow. Okay, one way you could look at this is, if you were so inclined, to make big jumps. We're not talking about little incremental improvements. We're talking about big improvements. One way that you can look at this a suggestion I made from my first book, is to take a blank piece of paper, just a blank piece of paper out of your copy machine or something, and look at it and say, this is my day. Right here, this is my day. White paper. There is no precedent set by yesterday's performance, nothing to warrant what your expectations of today should be. The only thing that limits what you put on that paper is your memory and your reason, everything being reasonable based on who you were yesterday, an hour, 5 minutes ago. Okay, all the evolution, all the progress, as Tony just quoted George Bernard Shaw, happens in the realm of what? The realm of the unknown, the friggin' jungle, man. Again, it's not about being comfortable. And yet here we are, Tony and I and all of our members here with the Extreme Team, we work in a large online marketing community. Now, online marketing is an interesting thing because a lot of times people are looking for a path of least resistance. Okay, you see a lot of sales pitches, a lot of biz op kind of stuff where it's, click this easy button and then our magic system does everything for you and then you get rich. And, fortunately for you, you found us because, hey, it's not your fault, man. Everything else was BS. Everything else was a scam. But here we've got the magic elixir that will change your fortune. Have you ever heard a pitch like this? It makes me sick because I've heard it so many times. My point is that a lot of people buy that deal. Like with what we do, Tony and myself and our other members here, we actually work, right? What is work? We should define that because it's a 4-letter word. Work is on-purpose action. Tony mentioned the word purpose before, and of course, when somebody says purpose, my ears perk up because a lot of people don't use words like that these days. They use other kinds of words, more like entertainment kind of stuff rather than production kind of stuff. Okay, so we're producers, but when we talk about work, it's on-purpose activity. That's what work is. Okay, it doesn't have to be a miserable, laborious thing. Tony enjoyed playing the piano. He got good at that. Tony enjoyed doing online business and even offline business. We met offline. Okay. He became diligent in those things. There's another word. Diligent. I'll tell you what, you guys want to increase your ability to market and sell and make money? Learn the meaning of the words that you use, right? Diligent is one. A lot of people think that hard work is the answer, all right? Like our rhino charging through the jungle, that was hard. Yeah, there's some adversity there, but guess what? You're born to do it. You're born to produce something of value on this planet, right? Not just sit around and consume and be entertained. And that is exactly what we do. The word diligent comes from the Latin word diligere, which means to take delight in. Diligent, delight, right? You get it? To love your work. That's what it is. It's not hard work. It's you love your work, right? People say, John, how many hours a day do you work? I don't freaking know. I feel like work. I just do my thing. I'm fulfilling a purpose. I'll know when I'm done because I'll be dead, right? So here's the thing. That's not reasonable, okay? But all progress depends on me doing that. What George Bernard Shaw said in his quote is true for the individual. All progress depends on the unreasonable man or woman, of course. Okay, but it's also true for the group. It's also true for society. Was Steve Jobs unreasonable in his demands for his Apple devices? Yes, unreasonable. He had a vision, unreasonable vision. Okay, and we can use many examples, but you get the idea. So it benefits the individual. He became a billionaire. It benefits the group. Now you get to participate in, technical devices like iPhones and stuff like that. So all progress, regardless of who's benefiting, depends on the unreasonable man or woman. Are you part of that solution, or are you part of the problem? And when I look at that, okay, one of the things that drives me, talk about high-level success, top earner kind of results. Tony and I both have made a lot of money. In the top 1%, probably the top 1/10 of 1%. I don't know. I can make up stats right now if you want, but definitely in the top 1% of people who have ever attempted home-based business, network marketing, online marketing, that sort of thing. That doesn't happen because we're somehow milquetoast, right? Somehow, mild in our commitment to our own purpose, or vague about it, okay? Or it doesn't happen because we're succumbing or bowing to our circumstances. I'll give you another idea about being unreasonable, and this is right out of James Allen. This book could sell for $100,000. Okay, this booklet, I mean, look at this. This is nothing. This is a few pages. Okay, you can read this in one sitting. If you don't have a copy of it, I'll email you a PDF. Just send me an email, and I'll send you a copy on PDF. James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is worth, just read Chapter 2 over and over and over again for the rest of your life, and you'll be so friggin' powerful. It'll be ridiculous. Chapter 2 is the effect of thought on circumstances. Just wanted to make sure I didn't misquote him. In fact, it is exactly the effect of thought on circumstances. And he says here that men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. I want you to think about this again. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Again, these authors keep talking about men. It's men and women, but a lot of this stuff was written before the dumbing down of America had really set in. Okay, so this is an old book. But you get the point. Okay, this is written from the knowledge of the most successful men of industry that existed during that time. And what James Allen and other authors like Napoleon Hill and another guy who I'll quote here in a minute, Wallace D. Wattles, what these guys observed was that the people who were getting the best results were people that were not cowering to their circumstances. One of the circumstances that has been prevalent in the minds of people who seem to continually be stopped by the circumstances that hamper a lot of people. You think about modern society and the things you hear on the news over and over and over and over again. The sky is falling. People can't make money. It's hard. Unemployment is up. You're a victim, right? It's a very popular topic, that you're a victim. It's a very easy thing to sell to the cows, that you're a victim. Cows love that because, again, it gives them the excuse to just stay on the pasture and not go anywhere, not venture into the jungle, because after all, it's only those few successful people there, those celebrities, those special people that have the thick rhino skin. Okay, the truth is we were all born a rhino, just like the cognition that happened in the mud pit when our rhino friend noticed that all these powerful rhinos were coming out of the jungle. Oh my goodness, they're all rhinos. They're just acting like cows. Okay, one of the things that these authors realized is that you don't, successful people, they don't cower to their circumstances. They don't look at their circumstances as their master. One of the other things that James Allen says in this book is that circumstances do not create the man, they reveal him to himself. So think about that. You're a person who's experiencing perhaps some adverse circumstances, some uncongenial circumstances, not friendly to your purposes. Well, guess what? They're based on the decisions that you made in the past, based on who you were in the past. Okay, you were a person. We're talking about were, not now. Okay, we're not going to affirm that you are now. You were a person that perhaps made weak decisions. You got weak circumstances now. But at no point, when you turn that switch on, when you say, okay, great, that was the past, now is the future, at no point do you cling to those circumstances and say, well, now I'm limited because I've got these circumstances. You see, there's causes and effects. Ralph Emerson talked about this as the law of laws. He said, you've got cause and you've got effect. Certainly, you've heard of these laws, right? You've heard of something like cause and effect. And when people look at circumstances as the cause of what they can and cannot accomplish, they look amiss, because circumstances are in fact effects based on what you did yesterday. Effects don't create effects. Causes create effects. So if we're going to be effective, think about this, if we're going to be effective, it absolutely demands that we assign ourselves as the point of cause. Effects can't create effects. If you're the effect of your circumstances, the circumstances are up here, you're down there, you're useless to yourself and to others. If you're the cause and the circumstances are the effect, well, now you can create new circumstances. The effect of thought on circumstances. So I'll bring up one more author, again, from 100 years ago. And then, you know what, I think I'm going to bring up one of the most powerful female authors, because all the guys keep talking about men, okay? A lot of powerful women here too. This is Wallace D. Wattles. This is The Science of Getting Rich. This is a copy that Bob Proctor, who is one of the guys I've studied his work, he went ahead and published this. It's out of print. It's 1910, so it's 104 years old now. But one of these circumstances that keeps people stuck is the point that I want to make for people who are looking at business. Okay, you want to apply this to business and making money, but I don't have a lot of money, but it's hard to make money. CNN told me that it's hard to make money, that people are unemployed, and blah, 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 blah. What is CNN? Constant negative news, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to flip the switch, and we're going to say these circumstances are no longer in control of my life. One of those ones that keeps staring us in the face, if you're like most people who have had trouble earning money online or offline in a home-based business, and you've been around that crowd, the big crowd of people, all right, who are nodding in agreement, even though they may think that they want to go ahead and be a rhino, they're still very much in agreement with the herd. You're going to hear people talk about their limitations, and one of those limitations is, I don't have the money. Now look, I got started in an MLM company back in the 1900s, man. I'm talking the Stone Age. It was a good, fine company, reputable company. It cost me $5,000 to join this MLM deal. And I worked it for 2.5 years full time. I made $12,000 my best year. I ended up $70,000 in debt. $5,000 cost me to get started. Did another one that cost me $1,000. Did another one. Well, I don't remember what that one cost me. But bottom line is, it cost me money to participate in a business that had the potential, and where other people were making money. I wasn't diligent. I didn't fall in love with that work. MLM just wasn't for me. I'm not an MLM guy. I'm not really a network marketer, which is terribly interesting because I've made a lot of money in network marketing, but it's a story for another time. I made millions in high ticket direct sales. Again, I didn't have the money, but it cost me $22,000 plus advertising and other expenses, travel expenses, et cetera, to get into that business. Yielded me millions. Okay, it cost me thousands of dollars to purchase training courses and products that are going to improve me as a human being, improve me as a marketer. Okay, I've done that as recently as, my goodness, a couple weeks ago. I spent $1,000 or whatever. So I'm constantly, I probably put $200,000 into my own education. I mean, the books didn't just appear here, and that's just a tiny part of my library. I got a closet full of stuff, audio courses, et cetera, et cetera. Not to mention live events and, traveling and all that. The point is that for me to make the big leap from someone who was hopeful for success, hoping I could get through that jungle and get to the promised land, okay, for me, going from hope to accomplishment required me to be a more powerful person than I was before. There was a shift in my again, my reasonableness. Okay, I had to get unreasonable with myself and stop basing my decisions on who I was yesterday. That is completely irrelevant. Remember the white piece of paper. It has no bearing. Yesterday has no bearing on what we draw on that white piece of paper today. We write what we want. Again, the only limitations are based on our memory and our reason from who we were, which is based on the past. Okay, so I had to decide. To be something more than I was. I didn't have the money. And here's what this guy, Wallace D. Wattles, said about this. This is very, very interesting. I'm actually going to read a paragraph or so out of this book and just see how this applies to your goals, whatever you want to accomplish. Okay, but money is the big one for a lot of people. I don't have the money. Listen to what Wallace D. Wattles said, Science of Getting Rich. He says, no one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. True, as you get capital, its increase becomes more easy and rapid, but no matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, you will begin to have capital. Now, what does he mean by a certain way? There's another word that I had to go and look up, okay, because I didn't understand the full meaning of it. Certain, one of the meanings of the word certain is the absence of doubt. The rhino knew that they could get to the promised land against the good opinion of the herd, okay? Certain way, in the certain way. I'll read that again. But no matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, you will begin to have capital. The getting of capital is a part of the process of getting rich. It is a part of the result which invariably follows the doing of things in a certain way. You may be the poorest person on the continent and be deeply in debt, but if you begin to do things in this certain way, you must infallibly begin to get rich. Because like causes must produce like effects, you will get rich even if you do not have any friends, influence, or other resources. And here's one of my favorite lines in the book. Here he goes. He's going to tell you the secret. If you have no capital, you can get capital. There it is. He just said it. If you have no capital, you can get capital. That's all the belaboring of, I don't have any money. That's all the belaboring of that excuse that he's going to do in this book. If you're in the wrong business, he goes on to say, you can get into the right business. If you are in the wrong location, you can go to the right location. You can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in a certain way which causes success. You must begin to live in harmony with the laws that govern the universe. What is that law? Cause and effect. It's the law of laws. As Emerson said, we must assign ourselves as the point of cause for our own success, for our own evolution. In my case, I didn't have any choice. My life was friggin' miserable, man. My life wasn't working, okay? And I just couldn't keep going like that. I don't know how many of you have felt like that desperate burning desire that you just got to take control. I mean, isn't that what we all want? Psychologists agree on very few things, but one thing they do agree on is that a person feels peace of mind to the extent that they feel like they've got control and dominion over their life, right? What do we want? We want freedom. We want control. The cows have given up control. We, as entrepreneurs, as people who take responsibility for our own evolution, we have control in our lives. We're the cause. We can read self-help books all day long about effectiveness. The key to becoming effective and having top earner results is to look in the mirror and say, that's who's responsible. I'm the cause of these results. And if my results today are like they were yesterday, it's because who I was yesterday, and I'm making decisions based on who I was yesterday. Was that a certain individual or was that a doubtful individual? Was that a powerful person of confidence that people want to follow and throw credit cards at and, hey, please lead me. We need leadership over here. And by the way, we do. The world desperately needs leadership. Or is it the person who's saying, hey, man, can I just press a button and have it all done for me? I don't know why that system didn't work for me. I'll give you a hint. Systems don't work for anybody. Okay, systems work for the people who work them. But all of them require an operator, somebody who's at cause, somebody at the helm, operating the ship. And it can't be just a cookie cutter version of the other guy, because again, I'll quote Ralph Emerson. He said, imitation is suicide. Okay, what's your point of differentiation? What is it that gets you up at night and keeps you up thinking about, man, the good that I can do with these goals, with this purpose, with this opportunity, this offer that I'm making, this product, this service? What good can I do? How can I serve? And with a degree of certainty, knowing that you're on the right track changes the whole game, changes the whole conversation. You need capital? You got circumstances? Think about the difference between somebody who goes into, let's say, a banker and says, I'd like to, I got this business plan, and it looks like there's a 50% chance that this would happen and that would happen. Again, here's a wishy-washy kind of not certain. What's the chance that they're going to get the capital, right? We're just talking about in the world of banking now. Versus the person who's like, Here's exactly how we're going to triple our money. In 90 days, in 3 years, and whatever the plan is, here's how this works. Here's the other comparative businesses. Here's our point of differentiation, our unique selling proposition, and I live for this stuff. Give me $1 million, right? What do you think is the difference there? Enthusiasm sells, my friend, whether we're talking about selling somebody on buying into our vision, buying into our business opportunity, buying our product. I think the guys at Apple aren't passionate about their stuff, or Microsoft for that matter, or this guy when he wrote his book, right? You think these guys are passionate? They are passionate. Speaking of passion, let me bring out one more. Dorothea Brand, this girl rocked the universe in 1936 with this book called Wake Up and Live. I mentioned this just a couple weeks ago on one of these broadcasts. This is an original copy, Simon & Schuster, and it actually has the number of copies that were in print at the time of this version of it. Here, I got this on eBay for $5. Man, I couldn't believe it. I would have paid $500 for this. Dorothea Brand, powerful, powerful woman. And in this book, she talks about she boils down her whole philosophy into one point, and it corroborates what this guy said, and what this guy says, and what this guy says. Okay, we're all in agreement on this. Okay, her whole philosophy is down to one sentence. Okay, but let me give you first just the titles of her first 4 chapters. I would have loved to meet this woman in person. 1936, during the Great Depression, same time Napoleon Hill was writing Think and Grow Rich, exact same time. A lot of people walking around with their head in the mud. Okay? Chapter 1, why do we fail? Chapter 2, the will to fail. Chapter 3, victims of the will to fail. Chapter 4, the rewards of failure. In this book, she talks about an unspoken consent between peers, members of the herd on the cow pasture. It's okay, you're okay, I'm okay. Just be satisfied with what you got. Hey, I won't hold you to account as long as you don't call me on my ineffectiveness and hold me to account. We'll have a gentleman's agreement over here, and we'll all just be mediocre together and sail through life tiptoeing and hoping to make it safely to death. Just please don't make me accountable. She said what changed her entire business. She was a writer and publisher. What changed her entire business was a one-line philosophy, changed everything. She became very successful. And the philosophy is act as if it were impossible to fail. Word for word, that's her philosophy. Act as if it were impossible to fail. Remember the word certainty? Changes everything. It's impossible to fail.